At Edward Cross's 60th birthday, the Oak Ridge Club glowed with old money and team pennants. Brian Reed walked in late, his right arm in a surgical sling. At the head table, Edward Cross, silver-haired and stern, raised his glass. His daughter Pamela sat beside him, her smile tightening when she saw Brian.
Two real men who win on the field, not the ones who break before the finish.
Brian didn't flinch. He set down his untouched drink. Then Pamela stood, champagne glass in hand.
Everyone, I have an announcement. Brian and I are done. He's a failed athlete, and Daddy says he'll never amount to anything in this sport.
The room went silent. Edward didn't object. He just took a slow sip of his single malt.
So that's it. 5 years of knowing them, and I am just a broken toy.
Brian stood, buttoned his blazer with one hand, and walked out. No words, no pleading. The cold night swallowed the sound of the door closing behind him. In his car, he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. The dashboard lights reflected in his eyes, but no tears came.
They think I am finished. But an injury isn't the end of a career. It's just the start of a different game.
He didn't go home. He drove until the streets blurred, then stopped at his apartment and stared at the torn baseball card in his hand.
What if I could have measured that motion? Tracked every degree and strain before it failed.
Inside, he grabbed a notebook and began sketching angles, vectors, force lines. At 2 a.m., he picked up his phone.
Leo, it's Brian. Remember that shoulder model I built for my thesis? What if we turn that into a wearable sensor?
Brian, it's 2 a.m., but tell me more. You want to build a sleeve that measures biomechanics in real time? That's actually genius.
By dawn, Brian was at Leo's apartment, still in yesterday's shirt, and they commandeered the garage.
We can use strain gauges and accelerometers. I've got some old Arduino boards. We can prototype this in a week.
This isn't just a gadget. It's how I can stop other athletes from suffering what I did.
They sketched the first prototype of the sensor sleeve, their coffee cold and forgotten as the sun climbed higher.
This is the start of something. I won't be a failure.
Weeks blurred into months. Brian and Leo lived in the garage on ramen and cold coffee, the prototype taking shape alongside a growing stack of unpaid bills.
Every investor rejection echoed Pamela's voice. A failed athlete with no business sense. Maybe they were right.
They finally landed a pitch meeting. Brian wore his only blazer, rehearsed the numbers, and walked into a sterile conference room.
Our sensor tracks 22 biometric markers in real time. It can reduce UCO injuries by over 40%.
The investor didn't even glance at the prototype. He called the idea a hobby project for a washed-up athlete and showed them the door.
Another door slammed shut, but I've been through worse. I won't stop until this works.
Then a lifeline. A Division II college coach read their blog post about injury prevention and called, desperate to save his pitcher's arms.
Coach, we'll tailor the sleeve to each pitcher's motion. Send us their video, and we'll ship the prototypes by Friday.
A week later, a college pitcher threw his first bullpen wearing Strike Vision. The data streamed live, arm angles and torque painting a perfect digital portrait.
The numbers don't lie, but neither does our bank balance. We need a real investor. Now.
A college pitcher improved dramatically. A sports blog article went viral, calling Strike Vision a game changer, a sports tech VC firm called. They sat across the table not to reject, but to negotiate.
They offered $3 million in Series A. $3 million, Brian.
It wasn't the money. It was proof that I wasn't the failure they called me.
Reed Tech moved into a glass-walled office downtown. Brian hired a team, and the prototype became a product. Late at night, Brian pulled up the financials of a struggling MLB team, the very franchise Edward Cross had adored for decades.
Losing millions each year. A few more bad seasons, and the league might force a sale.
Why are you tracking that team? We're not in the ownership business.
Just keeping an eye on an industry. You never know where the market goes. If I owned that team, everything they said would be buried under a monument of my success.
5 years after the party, Brian Reed stepped onto a conference stage, his company worth hundreds of millions. The audience saw a composed CEO, not a failed athlete.
Every injury is a dataset. I failed because no one measured what was breaking until it was too late.
After the applause, alone in his office, he opened financial reports on the team that never left his mind. The franchise was bleeding money. A news alert flashed. Sources confirm the franchise will be put up for sale by the end of the quarter.
The moment has come. I didn't build a billion-dollar war chest to sit on the sidelines.
He called Leo and a select group of investors into a boardroom. The walls displayed the team's logo, but the air was thick with tension.
Brian, buying a franchise takes more than cash. It's public, political, and personal. Are you sure this is about business?
It's about proving what this team can become with the right analytics, and maybe proving something else.
By week's end, they formed a consortium. Brian would be the majority owner and public face of the bid, risking his entire reputation.
This isn't just a purchase, it's the only revenge that matters.
In a wood-paneled boardroom, Brian faced 3 old money investors. They had no interest in tech, only tradition.
Mr. Reed, you've never run a ball club. Why should we trust an app developer with a century-old franchise? Because I understand what breaks a player before the stats show it. That's the difference between losing seasons and a dynasty.
We've analyzed the team's injury history. With our system, their farm system could outperform anyone in the division.
The room stayed silent. Then the eldest investor, a man whose family owned season tickets for decades, leaned forward.
You are not just buying a team, son. You are buying a piece of this city's soul. Don't forget that.
The tension broke when the lead investor extended his hand. The consortium agreement lay on the table, awaiting signatures.
Gentlemen, you won't regret this. We're going to build something legendary. They think it's about winning games. They have no idea what the real trophy is.
By the end of the week, the consortium had the capital and the legal framework. The bid was ready. The bid went public. Within hours, a hedge fund countered with a hostile offer and a promise to move the team across state lines.
They want to strip the team from the city. It's not just about money anymore.
The league commissioners questioned his inexperience. The franchise's old guard called him a tech bro who didn't understand baseball's soul.
They're throwing every insult from my past back at me. But I've been called worse by people who mattered more.
That evening, a local news station interviewed a longtime season ticket holder, Edward Cross. He sat in his seat, staring into the camera.
This team needs traditional ownership, not some outsider who never even played at this level. Real men built this game.
Brian watched the clip in his office. His expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the remote.
Real men. Edward, you have no idea how real I've become since you last saw me.
The bidding war escalated daily. Brian's consortium held firm, but the hedge fund's tactics grew ruthless, trying to poison the deal.
Let them try. I've waited 5 years for this. A little more pressure won't break me.
Brian's consortium sweetened the offer. $100 million for stadium upgrades and a state-of-the-art analytics lab. The current owner began to listen. Behind closed doors, Brian added a final non-negotiable term. The franchise must retire jersey number 27 at the home opener.
Number 27? Brian, that's your old college number. This isn't about the team. It's personal.
It's about honoring the science that saved careers. If my name is on it, so be it.
The lawyers hesitated, warning that such a clause could raise suspicions. But Brian didn't flinch.
You are building a legacy, not settling a score, right? Because if the media finds out,
Let them suspect. By the time they understand, it'll be too late.
The improved bid was accepted. Signatures dried on the page, but the number retirement clause remained buried in the fine print. The consortium celebrated. But Leo kept his eyes on Brian, a shadow of doubt crossing his face.
Almost there. Soon, they'll all see what a failed athlete can do.
After weeks of scrutiny, the league approved the sale. Brian Reed was now the majority owner of the franchise. The news flash lit up every sports network. An unknown tech mogul had bought a century-old team, and speculation ran wild about his motives.
It's official. From a torn shoulder to this stadium, every insult is about to be repaid.
Brian wasted no time. He scheduled a press conference at the stadium for the next day.
Make sure every season ticket holder gets a personal invitation. I want the stands full of their lifelong fans.
Including the ones who trashed your reputation on local news? Leo asked, his tone cautious.
Especially them. They're the reason I am here. Let them witness the beginning.
Among the envelopes, one was addressed by hand. Edward Cross, season ticket holder since 1978, Section A, Row 1. The press conference stage sat empty that night, the podium bathed in a single spotlight, waiting.
Tomorrow, Edward. You'll see who's been standing on the field all along.
The morning before the press conference, Brian walked through the empty stadium, pausing at the banners of retired numbers swaying above the outfield.
Number 27 will hang there soon. A permanent reminder that the man they called a failure owns this field.
In his den, Edward Cross tore open the embossed envelope, a personal invitation from the new ownership.
An invitation to kiss the ring of some tech billionaire. I'll go, but only to see if this fool disrespects our traditions.
Across town, Pamela Cross stared at her office computer screen, the headline blaring the team's new owner, Brian Reed.
Brian Reed. I knew a Brian Reed once, but he was a washed-up pitcher with a bum shoulder. Can't be him. Must be a different man.
That afternoon, Brian stood in the press conference room, adjusting the microphone. Every seat would be filled, every camera trained on him.
Let them come. They'll hear exactly what I've planned for 5 years.
Edward pulled on his vintage team jersey, adjusting the collar in the hallway mirror. He had no idea he was dressing for his own humiliation. Pamela pulled up the live stream on her phone, curiosity nagging at her. She settled in to watch the stranger who now owned her father's heart. Cameras flashed as Brian Reed stepped to the podium. The room expected a billionaire's empty platitudes.
Before we discuss the future, let me introduce myself. I am not a typical owner. I am a failed athlete.
A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not the script they had prepared for.
5 years ago, I blew out my shoulder. My girlfriend told me I'd never amount to anything in sports. Her father, a lifelong fan of this team, agreed.
He paused, and a photo filled the screens behind him. A young pitcher in a college uniform. Number 27, mid-throw.
That was me. Tonight, I am proud to announce this franchise will retire jersey number 27 at the home opener.
In the stands, Edward Cross froze. The image on the screen burned into his memory. The boy his daughter had thrown away.
Number 27, Brian Reed. That's the boy who walked out of my party, and now he owns my team.
Across the city, Pamela's phone slipped from her hand. The live feed showed the same college photo. She whispered a name.
Now they know. But the real message hasn't been delivered yet.
On her screen, the college photo froze. Pamela's blood ran cold. The man she humiliated now owned her father's legacy.
Brian Reed. The boy I dumped at Daddy's party. He's not just rich, he owns the team. He owns us.
In the front row, Edward's grip splintered the armrest of his seat. The number 27 blazed on the Jumbotron, a brand he could not escape.
That worthless failure. He planned this, bought my team just to mock me in front of the world.
Brian's voice cut through the silence, steady and precise. He had not glanced at the stands once.
This franchise will be rebuilt on data and resilience, traits that no amount of tradition can replace.
The Jumbotron replaced the photo with a stylized graphic. Retirement Ceremony 27. Home opener. The message was permanent.
He's going to hang his failure in the rafters for eternity, and everyone will cheer him for it.
Edward's face drained of color, replaced by a deep purple rage. He was trapped, a season ticket holder forced to witness his own humiliation.
They're squirming now, but the final act hasn't even started. I'd like to invite a very special fan down to the mound. Someone who's been a season ticket holder for over 40 years.
In Section A, Row 1, Edward Cross sat frozen as an usher tapped his shoulder and gestured toward the field.
He's calling me out in front of everyone. I can't refuse. The cameras are already on my face.
The crowd interpreted his hesitation as emotion, rising to their feet in a standing ovation as the usher helped him stand. At the mound, Brian waited, turning the ceremonial baseball in his hand, his expression unreadable. Edward walked down the stadium steps, his legs obeying on instinct, the roar of the crowd drowning out his pounding heart. The stadium lights seemed to intensify as Edward stepped onto the grass. Cameras formed a semicircle, and Brian stood 20 feet away.
5 years of silence. And now the world watches as the final piece falls into place.
This is my punishment. Everyone will see me shake his hand and pretend I didn't destroy him.
Brian extended his hand, his smile never reaching his eyes. The entire stadium held its breath. Edward's hand trembled as it met Brian's. The camera zoomed in, broadcasting his surrender to the world.
His grip is cold. He's not forgiving me. He's branding me in front of the entire city.
Thank you for being such a dedicated fan all these years.
Brian released the handshake and stepped back, his smile a perfect corporate mask. The crowd roared, interpreting the moment as pure sportsmanship. The ovation was deafening. Fans wept openly, believing they had witnessed a passing of the torch between generations. Edward stood frozen, his hands still extended, the weight of the insult crashing down in front of 40,000 people.
He thanked me, like a stranger, like I was nothing but a customer who kept buying tickets.
Brian turned to the crowd, arms raised, basking in applause that meant something entirely different to him alone.
That was for every word they said, for every door they closed.
The handshake was over. Edward Cross had been officially welcomed to the new era, and he could not speak. 2 ushers appeared at Edward's side, steadying him as his knees buckled. He did not resist their grip. The crowd, still applauding, interpreted his wobble as emotion. No one saw a man being dismantled from the inside.
He called me a fan. After everything, I am only a fan to him.
Brian returned to the podium without a glance backward. He adjusted the microphone as if the previous scene had been a commercial break.
Moving forward, we're allocating $50 million to a comprehensive analytics division, because this franchise will lead, not follow.
In the stands, Pamela leaned forward, her fingers digging into the seat cushion as she watched her father disappear down the tunnel.
He's destroying Daddy without raising his voice, and I can't do anything but watch.
She turned toward the podium, her gaze pleading, but Brian's eyes swept past her as if she were a stranger in a crowd. He continued his presentation, detailing trade strategies and stadium renovations, his tone never wavering. The press conference marched on, but in 2 seats of this stadium, a family name that had stood for 40 years had just crumbled to dust. Brian closed his presentation and stepped away from the podium without a final glance at the crowd. Pamela attempted to push through the crowd toward the private exit, but a security guard's arm stopped her cold.
He's getting away. Again. And I can't even get close enough to beg.
In the parking lot, Edward Cross shuffled toward his car, the stadium lights casting long, stark shadows behind him.
He's in the owner's box now, looking down on me, just like I looked down on him.
Brian stood in the owner's box, looking down at the emptying field, hands resting on the railing. Edward gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, the stadium lights reflecting off the windshield like a muted fire.
I can never sit in those seats again. He's taken that from me, too.
I own everything now. The field, the numbers, even their memories.
The car sat in the empty lot long after the last taillights vanished. When Edward finally turned the ignition, the sound was hollow. Edward pushed open the door to his den and stopped. The wall of team memorabilia stared back at him, framed jerseys, ticket stubs, a championship flag.
40 years of loyalty. And he turned it into a trophy of my own arrogance.
He reached up and lifted a vintage signed jersey from its hook. He carried it to the desk and laid it flat, still in its frame. The front door clicked open. Pamela stepped inside and saw him standing there, still in his game day jersey.
Daddy, talk to me, please? We can.
He raised one hand, cutting her off, and turned back toward the desk. He didn't speak a word that night. When morning light crept through the blinds, Edward was already dressed. He pulled the season ticket books from the drawer and walked out. He drove in silence, the stadium rising in the distance. He parked and walked toward the ticket office, the ticket books heavy in his pocket.
If I can't sit in that seat and feel pride, then they're just pieces of paper.
He stepped up to the counter. The clerk looked up expectantly. Edward slid the tickets across the surface and opened his mouth.
I can't sit there anymore. Not after what that man did to me.
The clerk didn't recognize him. Just another fan, trading in his seats. She stamped a form and slid it back across the counter. The season ticket books vanished into a drawer. 40 years of devotion reduced to a transaction number. Edward turned from the counter without another word. His steps echoed in the empty concourse. He paused at the exit and looked up, beyond the rafters, to the tinted windows of the owner's box.
He's up there somewhere watching, and he won, without ever raising his voice.
He lowered his gaze and walked through the gates. The sun was climbing, but the day felt like dusk. Back in his den that evening, the wall was bare. Only the hook where the jersey had hung remained.
He took my team, but I gave him the key. I handed it to him 5 years ago.
The ticket office kept his seats. By next season, someone else would sit in Section A, Row 1, and never know what they replaced. Brian stood at the window of the owner's box, watching the grounds crew paint the foul lines. A quiet knock came from the door. An assistant informed him that a lifelong season ticket holder had just surrendered his seats. Section A, Row 1.
So Edward finally broke. He gave up the one thing he loved more than his own pride.
A slight upturn touched Brian's mouth, the only visible crack in his composure. He stared out at the field and remembered the night he was called a failure, the cold slap of Pamela's words. Now the grass below belonged to him, every inch a quiet rebuttal.
They said I'd never amount to anything in this sport, but I own the field they worship.
His gaze swept over the empty stadium, from the retired numbers to the owner's box.
Revenge isn't loud. It's the silence on the other side of a closed door.
He stayed there until the lights flickered on, a man who had finally rewritten his own story. Days later, Pamela walked alone through the city, her reflection ghosting across storefront windows. Her heels clicked on the pavement. She stopped at a newsstand. The front page stopped her cold. Brian Reed, arms raised at the pitcher's mound, a banner celebrating the retired number 27.
Failed athlete returns as owner. The headline was a mirror, and I was the one who broke him first.
She read the article, every word a slow burn. It detailed his tech empire, his biomechanics breakthrough, his silent purchase of the team. The article described the jersey retirement ceremony. Her mind flashed back to that birthday party, her father's stern nod, her own cutting toast.
He's a failed athlete. I said that in front of everyone. Every headline now screams that I was wrong.
She looked again at his photo. Calm, confident, standing on the very field her father had worshipped. A man who needed no one's approval.
I threw away someone who was destined to own the world. Now he owns the only thing my father ever loved.
She knew she could never apologize. No words could undo the humiliation she had carved into his past. She folded the newspaper and walked on, her shadow stretching behind her like a trailing regret. The home opener roared with a sold-out crowd. On the Jumbotron, the retirement there summarily numb. Who, for a time, number 27 began, a silk banner with a bold 27 rose toward the rafters. The crowd erupted, a thunderclap of approval.
There it is. My failure turned into a monument.
Brian stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. His phone buzzed with congratulations that he didn't bother to read.
They're celebrating my injury. The irony is perfect.
Leo stepped beside him, a quiet presence, and followed Brian's gaze to the banner.
5 years ago, we were in your garage. Now, everyone sees what I always knew. 5 years ago, I was nobody. Now, they'll never forget.
They stood in silence as the roar of the crowd slowly faded into the first pitch of the game. Brian's number hung in the rafters, a permanent testament to a reckoning that had begun with a single torn baseball card. After the game, Brian stood alone in the owner's box, the stadium emptying below. The roar had faded to a distant murmur. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, not of his college days, but of the dusty garage where it all began.
The world sees a stadium. I see a garage and a friend who believed in me.
He pressed the photo against the cold glass of the window, a silent tribute to where everything started. Outside the stadium, Edward Cross walked home along the empty street, his footsteps heavy on the pavement.
He took my team because I couldn't see past my own pride. And now, there's nothing left.
The stadium scoreboard flickered to black, the final inning having long since ended. Only the word final glowed. Brian turned from the window, leaving the photo on the glass. Tomorrow he would run a team, but tonight he was just a man who had kept a promise to himself. Edward reached his front door and paused, staring at the dark house. Inside, the empty hook on the wall awaited him. The stadium settled into silence, its new banner swaying gently in the night breeze. A quiet monument to a man who had refused to stay broke.